Welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel, a non-profit web TV channel bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live.
Hello, dear friends and family in Christ, and welcome back to the Weekend Prog on Channel 1 at Global Vision TV, as we continue to discuss more of the big questions that we're often asked about. And this week, we have another special edition for you with dear Babs from Northern Ireland, and she's our disability correspondent. And before you switch off thinking this is of no interest to you, I urge you to watch on as Babs explains that there are so many different types of what we call disability that you may be very surprised to see that this program is of importance to you, and you may even be surprised at what you learn. But first, as we continue to pray for the situation in Israel, we will have more Israel updates and Weekend Prog specials for Channel 25 Focus on Israel, as well as more on-the-ground news from the persecuted church coming up. And our international discussion panel will be back with their views from a biblical perspective on current events as they answer more of your big questions. Now, can I also point you to Channel 17 Spiritual Deception, where amongst around 100 other videos, there is the Spiritual Deception series on everything from the NAR, Word of Faith, Prosperity Gospel, Signs and Wonders, Purpose-Driven to Heavy Shepherding, the cults, Moral Deception, Heresy, Hermeneutics and Hebrew Roots, and much, much more from our experts in these areas. And it's all from the scriptures, of course. So it's not just doom and gloom here. We are a channel who looks to inspire and bring comfort where required, as well as to educate and uplift you. So the easiest way to find us is just to go to our globalvision.tv and either click on the link at the top of the page or scroll down the pictures and click one to find out more about that channel. And then you would just click on that to go straight there. Or if you're already watching on YouTube, for example, go to @globalvision.tv. It's all one word. Just look for the round blue GV247 logo and you'll see our 26 channels all laid out on the homepage. So whichever social media you're looking on, we ask the Lord just to be with us, to minister to you as we give him thanks and glory for all he has done through Global Vision TV over the last 2 decades, because it is only sound teaching. So it's important, please, that you subscribe, as the YouTube algorithms are always changing. Please also like the episodes, click the wee bell to be notified of each new program, and don't be afraid to comment below and share. So, to our special guests this week, we first introduced Babs as part of our international discussion panel a number of weeks ago, as we prayed and waited upon the Lord for his timing to record this episode. In fact, we're actually doing it in 2 parts, each of which is relevant to you. And we look forward, as always, to your feedback in the comments below, no matter, as I've said before, which social media platform you're watching on. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Babs to those of you who don't know her, and already we have received kind comments from those of you who have been encouraged through her wisdom and her expertise on earlier programs, for which I know she gives God all the glory. So welcome, Babs. Hello.
Hi, Deborah. It's lovely to be back.
And the scary thing for you is you've got a program all to yourself, but I know that the Lord is with you and you are an expert on your subject. And with both of those things, not least the Lord, of course, that will give you confidence, because I know you have so much to share. So first of all, we don't call you our disability correspondent lightly. It maybe sounds a very grand title, but you've earned that title. So could you just tell us about your qualifications?
Well, I'm from a nursing background. I was a qualified nurse. I'm a qualified BSL to English to BSL sign language interpreter. And I am a qualified disability equality trainer. But also for many, many years, I've been heavily involved in organizations that promote the rights and integration and equality of disabled and deaf and older people.
So, Babs, you really do know what you're talking about. And in fact, you've actually got first-hand experience of what we're calling disability at the moment. So, a brief rundown. I think you've actually got something like 22 diagnosed illnesses, but just a brief rundown, maybe on 3 or 4 of them, to give people an idea that you know firsthand what you're speaking about.
Well, yeah, as you've said, I've 22 diagnosed conditions. 3 are degenerative, 2 are life-threatening. And as a result, I need to use a wheelchair with neck support and 2 hearing aids and many other aids. And I need support with daily tasks.
We've had several discussions about using the word disability because I'm not particularly comfortable with it. I think some of the PC stuff has really got to me, but in all seriousness, before we look at the different categories, which may surprise many of our viewers, can you start with the definition so we can proceed from there?
Certainly. I'm going to read it because I do not trust my wording if I don't. Well, now, the definition of disability under the Disability Discrimination Act and the Equality Act says that someone is disabled if they have a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on a person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. And what that really means is substantial is it hindering your everyday life? Does it affect you in any way? Can you not carry out life as you used to? And long term would be a year or over. So that would define. Now, a person doesn't need to say, oh, that means I'm disabled, but it does mean that if you're employed and because of your impairments, maybe you need longer breaks. Say you have a bowel condition and your employer is refusing that and threatening to dismiss you. Well, under the Disability Discrimination Act that says you have a right to reasonable adjustment, you'd be able to tackle that. Whereas before there wouldn't have been a thing you could have done.
It's really fascinating, Babs, and I don't want to explain at the moment because you'll have the chance to do it later, but a lot of this legislation has occurred, I believe, because of people who have been impaired in some way have actually fought for it. So you can tell us about that in a minute. Babs, I believe there's 5 categories of disability. Would you mind explaining each one for us?
Certainly. Physical is pretty self-describing. Someone who would have a mobility impairment, or someone who has a lung disease, that would be physical. Then there is learning and learning stroke developmental conditions. That would be someone who maybe has Down syndrome or who is on the autism spectrum, or who has dyslexia or dyspraxia. Then there's mental health. That would be someone who would have bipolar condition or suffer from schizophrenia or other mental health conditions. Then there's sensory. That would be someone who is blind. And then there's hidden. And hidden conditions are those, needless to say, that you can't see, that aren't obvious, and they can cover all the other 4 categories. For example, someone who is deaf, you would not necessarily be able to tell unless you've seen hearing aids, but not all deaf people use hearing aids because sometimes they're no use. They're only for conductive deafness. If someone doesn't have a white cane, you can assume that they're perfectly sighted, but they may have a visual impairment, like my wee mommy did, etc.
Thanks, Babs. You know, a lot of people don't think about the hidden impairments. I think I really became aware of that a few years ago when you see in well, what we call public loos or public toilets, washrooms in this country, that more and more of them, particularly in stores and shopping malls, will have a notice on saying disabled. Not all disabilities are visual. And that's interesting. Could you give us another couple of examples of hidden disabilities that people just don't even think about?
I can use my own. I've chronic renal hypokalemia, so I need to drink potassium chloride all day long, every hour, in order to keep my muscles, my heart beating, etc. If I miss a dose, I can become very ill. I get very drained and sometimes confused and muddled. And people would maybe think I've been drinking. Also diabetes, someone who has whose blood sugar goes up or down below a certain amount, they would you wouldn't be able to tell unless they went hyper or hypo. The same with me. I wear a talisman just in case. Unlikely if it's well under control, but in the unlikely event, if I lose consciousness, and this contains all that anyone needs to know to provide help. And someone with diabetes would either wear a bracelet or something around their neck to indicate. There's so many. Someone who has bipolar condition, you might just think they're very hyper and very quick-witted and moody. You know, one minute they're way up, next minute way down, unless you're aware. Yeah, so many.
Now, so what's called bipolar now is what we used to call manic depression, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I grew up with that, with somebody in my family, and I know what you mean, the euphoric highs and the very, very low lows. And this particular person did worked in a job that they absolutely hated, but they managed to function. But when they got home, this side of their nature came through, and it is very sad, because I think a lot of people, particularly with mental health problems,
Yes.
they don't understand that they can get this label disabled. And it's not one that we want, is
No.
it, Babs? I mean,
No.
truth be told, my circumstances, for example, and it really is being labeled like that is really makes you take a big step back, particularly when you're a believer, when you're a Christian, and examine a whole lot more than just your walk with the Lord. You're suddenly realizing, wait a minute, I'm not as strong as I thought I was, or I'm frail, or whatever. Could you just explain a wee bit more about sensory, the category of sensory disabilities? So you named the two obvious ones. Well, I'm saying obvious, deafness and blindness. Is there anything else?
Yeah. I should add, in regards to deafness, the deaf community are a very strong community and would not take very kindly to me calling them disabled. Hence the reason I said I was involved in disabled, deaf, and older people. They have their rich language and culture, but under the DDA, if they're ever discriminated against, yes, they would come under the category because of hearing loss. I should say that in respect of the deaf community. Other would be some people do not have a sense of touch. They can't feel. Therefore, they could grab something really, really hot and get very badly burnt. I cannot remember that it's a very big name. There's of the condition, but it means that, you know, parents have to be extra careful in watching their children until they reach an age where they can be self-aware, and not to grab things or walk. They could walk on glass and not be aware. There's that, and then the loss of the sense of smell. It means you can't taste either, but it can be serious. Whereas, you know, if there are fumes, you know, you might smell burning. Someone wouldn't smell burning, and it can be a big hindrance to life.
Before we move on, learning. So you mentioned autism. This is something I'm particularly interested in. I'm quite an advocate for those who have certain forms of it that I'm familiar with. And as you know, Babs, we actually did a program with a Christian man who, I think he was diagnosed in his 40s. Somebody who'd been a long-term friend of ours, and he said, "But didn't you know I had Asperger's, or ADL as they call it now, I believe?" And we said, "No, we just thought you were odd." And we laughed because all I know is my husband and I are odd as well. So, hey, we're in good company. In fact, Babs, the Bible says that we are a peculiar people,
That's
called
for
out.
sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
And of course, there are varying degrees on the autistic spectrum as well. So this is why I'm saying, dear, if you're still there, you'd be surprised how much this subject could affect you or somebody close to you. So we're talking about in the UK, for example, and I know it's very similar in other countries where there are 5 categories of what we're just calling disability at the moment.
Yeah.
And with that, it is an absolutely massive, massive spectrum.
Yeah.
And being aware that these exist can only be helpful. And I'll tell you why. I was very strictly brought up, as most people of my generation were. So I know that going to a supermarket, going to the shops, and seeing a child who was just badly behaved, I used to think, oh, that's ridiculous. Tut tut. They need a jolly good smack on the wrist. By the way, that's illegal in Scotland. You are not allowed to physically chastise your child at all in this country. However, and one can be very judgmental, and it's understandable. Let's be honest, it's understandable. Anybody who's been a parent may well know about the terrible twos and tantrums, which is a natural part of a child growing up where they're pushing the boundaries. But there are older children, and also in these days of lawlessness, which of course the Bible talks about because of the days in which we're living, the increase in lawlessness as the love of many grows cold. It's very difficult to know if you're in a lift, an elevator, with a naughty child, a spoiled child, a badly behaved child, or one who is having real challenges, as is their parent or carer, and who need compassion rather than judgment. It's a really difficult situation, but I have to say, having found out a lot more about it over the years, I'm a lot less fast to jump and make a judgment. And in fact, it really appalls me when I see people who do that, Christians in particular, because we ought to know better. So, and it can be this in many different areas of the disability spectrum. Somebody who doesn't walk easily, maybe with a kind of a rocking gait, for example, or unsteady on their feet, you can think, oh, they've obviously been having a drink. We're very, very quick to judge. And that's something that, I'm hoping that this program will help you with. Part 2, we'll be looking at judgment within the church. So stay tuned for that. Now, Babs, thank you. You've explained very well. We've got a good overview of 5 different categories. Now,
I should add, that all those categories interact. So someone may have 1 or 2 categories. Very few people have just one thing. Sometimes, like, again, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a wheelchair user, but I'm clinically deaf as well. So just thought I'd highlight that.
And the thing is, of course, I've known you so long. I think you came to a conference I did in Northern Ireland a few years ago. And so, of course, I don't see you as with any disability. And I have to remember to be a little bit more patient with you, perhaps. I'm a horrible person at times, but just I know that it's challenging, but not least you're being hard of hearing or clinically deaf, as you put it. And then you remind me when you talk about BSL, dear ones, dear viewer, that is British Sign Language. So Babs is very proficient and she actually translates even in churches. And I had to have a wee smile to myself when I found out that she'd been translating for was it ABBA music? Am I wrong, or was that something you just sent me on WhatsApp? I can't remember, but certainly for a musical item. And I was just imagining her signing what was being said and expressing it at the same time, and knowing you were probably just dying to join in with the singing, because I know that you enjoy that too. So Babs, we are not treating this as a heavy subject, all right? But within these 5 categories, I know there's many different views or models. Now, can we maybe take a look at a couple of them? The first one will obviously be medical, but then I want you to explain to us how the social model comes around. So would you mind awfully doing that, please, Babs? Just maybe start with the medical one.
The medical models would be the view came about by the medical profession and the government. And it would term, very basically, it would term a disabled person as someone who can't walk. So they're disabled because they can't walk. The problem is them. They're not normal. There's something wrong with them. Therefore, they cannot be an integral part of society unless they can be normalized. And an example I can use is the time of the thalidomide drug caused babies to be born without limbs. And therefore, parents here were encouraged to let their children go into care at the age of 2. To be taught to wear these artificial limbs that were very painful. Having listened to the testimonies of those who had to do it, they were very painful and very awkward, and they hated it and they were miserable. And the moment they came of age, off went the limbs and back to doing what comes naturally. When a child is born, if they don't have arms and a toy is available, you can be sure they will get that toy with their feet. They will adapt. That's the natural thing to do. And now, parents are a bit more, educated and a bit more aware. But back then, they felt they were doing what was right for their child in doing that. The social model came about by disabled people themselves fighting the cause down through the years. And it would say that I'm disabled not by my impairments, but by the barriers I come up against in society. So, for example, if I have to go to a building to interpret, which has happened, and that building has steps, I can't, I'm disabled. I can't get in. But if the building also has a ramp, I'm enabled. So therefore, I am not hindered by the fact that I can't walk. I'm hindered by the barrier. And that's what we have been sort of pushing with the government as well, to try and realize. And hence the reason that if you get a document that says, if you need this document in any other format, please contact us. And people often laugh when they say Braille. Well, hardly I know if I can't see, but they have, you know, that's put there so the person can ask someone to, you know, to access the Braille copy, have it sent to them. There are other models, you know, the tragic model, you know, which would be similar to the medical model, but it sees, again, would see disabled people as pathetic, you know, sad. They can't be part of society. They're what's the term is invalid. They're invalids. They can't participate in society, and they're more charity is what they need, but they can't be part of anything. They wouldn't be capable. And again, the social model would fight against that and say we're very much an integral part of society and we have a lot to offer. A lot of new developments have been because disabled people have brought them about. All the buses in Northern Ireland, well, I'd say 90% are all low floor with a ramp. And that was disabled people, one of which is sitting here. You know, and you know, as I say, you make a building or a bus, a form of transport accessible for a wheelchair. You make it accessible for a pram, for someone with mobility impairment, for a student with loads of books, for a housewife with loads of shopping, or a man with lots of shopping. You make it accessible for everyone. Everybody benefits because of us.
Great.
You're just wonderful.
You're amazing. You're amazing. You know, not just that. I held my breath there. You said a woman with bags of shopping and a man. And I was waiting for you to say loaded down with his briefcase, but you didn't. It came through with a man with bags of shopping. Oh, Babs. So, dear viewer, the medical model is where the medical establishment says you are disabled because you're different and you're unable to do certain things and you're an invalid. As Babs pointed out, invalid means invalid. So, of course, then we have the rise up and we have social model. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah.
Where such people who have no right to exist according to some others if they had their way, rose up and said, we are very valid. And they have turned around society. They really have. And it's one of these absolutes where it has improved society, in my opinion. People would maybe complain at the beginning, oh, it's all got to be politically correct. But I tell you what, every single person has a right to be able to use transport and so on. I know there's obviously going to be the very odd ones out for whatever reason, but as long as you can go out, you should be able to travel and so on. And then there's the tragic model. Poor wee you. Oh, sorry, I'd better translate that. You poor thing. Okay, but we'll talk about that in more detail when we come to the church. We've got some interesting ones to talk about then. So, Babs, I think that's been a really, really good overview. Now, dear viewer, I hope you found this interesting because we're going to come to a bit of a negativity here. Babs, in the world, socially, in society, in other words, what kind of discrimination do you come up against?
Oh gosh, all the time, every day, very rarely shall I not come against someone who feels that I should not be around. I've been chased, I've been lots of verbal abuse, lots of verbal abuse. I've been physically attacked. On transport, as I said, the buses are accessible, but if a drivers drive and slow down and then drive off laughing at me in his mirror and sometimes making a rude sign. I've had train drivers try to stick me in the luggage compartment where there is no air and no light once the door's shut. I'm not talking the guard's van, I'm talking a little compartment that's attached to a train for luggage during the summer months. Gosh, my mind is blank. I've been took my son to McDonald's as a treat. And I gave him the money. I said, look, you go, and he was 11 at the time. I said, look, you go and pay and I'll wait, because there was a queue, you know, so that I wouldn't be in the way. So, you know, my chair wouldn't be in the way. And so I waited at a table. And someone, a member of staff, came along and grabbed my chair and shoved me right out into the corridor in against the wall, and said that wheelchairs, yelling, that wheelchair shouldn't have been left there. And he could see I was in it. And I was trying to speak, but off he went, you know. And believe it or not, that's actually assault. I could have phoned the police and God had him charged. But I always take the make it better, don't get better, make it better. Wrote and said this should not have happened and this is what should have happened. I didn't want to make a big scene because I didn't want to upset Ben and my son. Recently I went, a friend was singing at a concert. Now, although I'm hard of hearing, I wanted to go support her. And I went into a building and no one knew me, you know. I said, look, I'm here to support my friend. And he said, certainly. And at the back, it was a church building. So he said, would you like to sit in the aisle? I said, no, I would actually be classed as a fire risk. But if you don't mind, I'll sit right at the back behind the last pew. And he said, perfect. He says, as long as you're happy there. I says, I'm happy. I said, there's loads of space behind me. That's fine. And along came a man and said, you can't sit there. Get back. Get back against that wall. Now, really shouting. And I said, but I'm hard of hearing. And if I'm here, I can catch the loop system. He says, get back against that wall. Get back. And he tried to pull my power chair back. And I went, okay, it's okay. Careful, because I didn't want to go over his toes. I went back. So I was beside the door and the draft was coming in at my neck. The concert began and this man was standing in the door and humming along, so I couldn't hear a thing, and chatting to somebody beside him and just generally making a lot of noise. But I took a spasm in the neck and had to leave. I waited to the interval and he went like, where are you going? He thought I was heading in to help myself to the refreshments. I says, I'm actually going home, if you don't mind. And out and away I went. That's, you know, that is someone seeing me as a danger because I'm a big chair, because I do look a bit intimidating because my power chair is high back. As I call it my God lover chair because I do look pathetic in it. And I always take I always understand, and I try to educate. There are people that would be, if I was at an event, be a bit nervous, that I might run someone over, so.
Well, Babs, sometimes I think I shouldn't listen to your stories because it makes me so angry. And suddenly all these scriptures are coming to me about anger being a sin, but it's to put you in the luggage compartment. I mean, it's just absolutely despicable. But I imagine that all of this is a refining, Babs. It's a refining. So, oh, golly gosh. Right, okay. We will smile sweetly, and I'd like to thank you for your time and ask if you don't mind, I was going to say hanging around, wheeling around, sitting around, waiting for to come back for part 2, Babs, because I really, really appreciate that. And I really think for our viewer, you've shown a whole new light on this subject, and I'm really, really grateful to you. So, Babs, thank you for your time. And as I say, refining, oh my goodness, you're very, very gracious, Babs. The Lord bless you. The Lord bless you. Oh my goodness. Dear viewer, when we come to part 2, you'll understand why I suddenly realized when I said the Lord bless you. You'll understand what that's all about in part 2.
It's all good.
When Babs explains just what it's like in the church setting. And again, I really do urge you to come back for that next week. This is very, very important. All right. So thank you again, Babs. Thank you for watching. So next week, we're going to look at disability in the church. Now, I know that we looked at that very briefly as a part of the discussion panel quite a number of weeks ago, but this is from Bab's own perspective, and I think it'll help you to examine yourself and hopefully know how to deal in some of the situations that come up. So please remember to subscribe, click all notifications and the bell so that you know when another episode is broadcast. Join one of our social media groups, email a question to info@globalvision.tv. All the details are in the description below, and of course tell us what subjects you would like discussed in future programs. So until then, until next week, thank you again, Babs. The Lord bless you. Bye bye just now. Bye.
This is GV247.tv, bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live. A powerful free resource with hundreds of short films on a wide range of Bible topics from experts around the world, plus full-length sermons and programs for teaching and encouragement. Choose from current affairs, signs of the times, a chance to voice your own opinion, and special offers on our full-length feature films, documentaries, and study materials. At over 4 hours in length, the Lamplight Project is a systematic 12-part Bible study series, a powerful teaching tool that begins with the origins of life and takes the viewer on a comprehensive journey packed with high-profile interviews, film, graphics, and illustrations, concluding with the return of Christ and an encouragement to stand firm and be faithful. Complete with a free study guide download for both personal and group study, this powerful interactive guide connects to over 1,000 programs with expert interviews on GV247.tv, our free service web TV channel. Does My Life Have Meaning? A powerful 1-hour presentation produced from the Lamplight Project. With a free copy of the Gospel of Luke, this film is crammed with engaging interviews, film and graphics. A life-challenging film to those searching for answers. As distributors for the Jesus film, we offer this timeless movie based on Luke's Gospel. This clear presentation of the life of Jesus Christ has been viewed worldwide and translated into over 1,200 languages. we provide the film with a free copy of the Gospel of Luke. The Daniel Project is a popular TV documentary that presents an overview of Bible prophecy and an encouragement to read the signs of the times. Hailed as one of the best TV films to be made on the subject, DVD extras feature a heart-to-heart interview about the way of rescue. Based loosely on the documentary, The Daniel Connection is a full-length feature film. This fictional thriller incorporates many of the themes promoted through pop culture and social media which affect people on a global scale. Launched at the Cannes Film Festival, The Daniel Connection points the ever-skeptical viewer to search the Bible for answers to life's deepest questions. We've been serving the body of Christ for over 30 years, and if you would like further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch.